Compensation benefits have long played a critical role in the American labor market. Simply put, businesses pay insurance for claims if a worker is injured on the job. The employee gives up the right to sue, but the employer pays medical costs and part of the wages while the worker recovers. But a new investigation by ProPublica and NPR finds workers' comp is being substantially eroded. Over the past couple decades, legislators in more than 30 states have passed laws reducing benefits or making it more difficult in many cases to qualify for them. States have also cut off benefits after arbitrary time limits. Let's hear.
Calling from the Rhodes Show.
Yeah, I'm trying to call in and talk to Randy Rhodes.
Oh, you got us. You found us. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great.
That's beautiful. What's your name?
Darren?
Darren. Where are you calling from, sir?
Washington State.
All right. What do you want to speak about today?
I'd like to talk about workers' compensation whistleblowers and the failure of the liberal left to put on the table the minimum federal standards that Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Tom Perez all told us we needed in a letter to OSHA and to the Department of Labor 4 years ago. So for 4 years, American injured workers have been failed by the liberal left. I'd like to know why.
All right. And you said your name was Darren?
Yes.
Got it. All right. Hold on.
All right, thanks.
It says, prepare to die, and then he says he's going to take his dog Bianca away from him. All right, Darren in Washington.
Yeah, hi. I was wanting to ask you some questions. I'm all for whistleblowers, and I'm a lifelong Democrat. So you supporting whistleblowers, that rocks. But when it comes to work comp whistleblowers asking for minimum federal oversight that Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Tom Perez told us injured workers we need, my liberal left seems to be running from me on that issue. Could you please tell me why?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Do you?
Yeah, I'm talking about minimum federal oversight for injured workers and work comp whistleblowers, ma'am.
Work comp whistleblowers? Can I have a name of somebody that you'd like me to look up?
Darren Fonso. I'm talking to you, ma'am. I'm a work comp pensioner out of the state of Washington who went through work comp hell.
Yeah, but which whistleblower should I look up to see the story?
Which whistleblower? I'm blowing the whistle right now to you, ma'am. Hello? There you go. She has no intent of getting honest with the injured workers of America. And I waited a long time for that, and I'm going to cut that long span of me waiting for her to reply out. But there you go. We got Randy Rhodes not wanting to get honest and not wanting to talk to a work comp whistleblower. Well, who's the work comp whistle? I'm trying to blow the whistle right now to you, Randy Rhodes, and you intently don't want to get this issue addressed. I've emailed you, I've phoned you, and I've done everything to get you to try and step up and represent labor and the injured workers of America with the needed minimum federal oversight. Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Tom Perez told us injured workers of America we need. So if we're being failed, it's because of the Randy Rhodes of America. And Tom Hartman, who tells injured workers, cheat. I hope you make it through it. So when Tom Hartman and Randy Rhodes don't know about a war on injured workers nor the needed minimum federal solutions, these are the folks who are failing the injured workers of America. Thanks for nothing, Randy Rhodes.
Welcome back. Tom Hartman here with you, and it's Anything Goes Friday. Darren in Everett, Washington, watching us on Facebook Live. Hey, Darren, what's up?
Hey, I want to talk about a war on injured workers and how it's adding to homelessness and inequality here in America. That back in 2015, OSHA and Senator Sanders and NPR all told us, and the U.S. Department of Labor with Tom Perez all come out and told us we need some minimum federal standards over these broken state work comp systems. Yet 3 years later, the left is silent, and I'm begging for help here as an injured worker in the state of Washington who has been abused and harmed. Yet I have our revolution not wanting to put this issue and Senator Sanders' solutions on the table. And I would like to know why the left basically is failing us at this time.
I don't know the answer to your question, Darren, and I'm sorry to hear about your circumstances. I hope you get through it. I'm sorry, I don't know. Paul in Sparta, Wisconsin. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Thanks for.
But, you know, thank you for saying that. And then we got a guy who's nuts, you said? We were asking him to call in.
Yeah, he's gonna
calling labor leader whores.
He's gonna call in a second.
Not all of them are whores.
But
let's get we got to get into this. We'll hear this guy out when he calls in. And you're only getting 30 seconds, dude. All right, I have a lot to go over. This real quick with Donnie. This is a healthy conversation.
Don't start.
No, I'm not starting.
No,
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, tell him to wait a second. Actually, you know, let's listen to him and then we'll get into your thing, because I want to give you time to. I want to give you time to really think about it.
I don't need time.
I think it's a
Shut your mouth.
I think it's a riveting thing that people want to hear about.
I don't think
Okay, all right, James, put him on. Is he mad? What's he mad about? James is yelling at him. James, we need more staff. You know, Stern has 77 fucking people. Stern, the great king of all media, Howard Stern, has 77 people. I have 2 assholes and a Skippy. What's up, buddy? Hello.
Hey, yeah, my name is Darren Fonso, and I'm an injured worker calling from Washington State, and I'm wanting to know why Senator Bernie Sanders and Tom Perez told us we need minimum federal oversight of our broken state work comp systems 3 years ago. Yet 3 years later, none of our union members or leaders will put that minimum federal standards on the table for the injured workers of America. And I want to know why we're being failed by our union brothers and sisters at this point.
Yeah. So what's the story? So 3 years ago, Sanders introduced some legislation that went nowhere in a government that we just can't get anything done, right? So
he didn't introduce no legislation.
Oh, he did introduce it.
He wrote a letter.
He wrote a letter.
Department of Labor and OSHA.
Yeah. You know,
asking for minimum federal oversight for the injured workers of America.
Now, what happened to you? You're injured?
No, I got a pension now after 7 years of work comp hell. I got put through hell for 7 years. I also had my father-in-law work to death in the state, who was a Mexican immigrant, where Walmart and the state and the state fund and Sedgwick insurer worked him to death on his on-the-job injury. I couldn't prove they worked him to death, but I did prove they were trying to cheat him out of a PPD award for an amputated part. We used that money to bury him with.
Now, what did you tell your union? Did you tell your union that you were upset about the lack of progress?
Oh, yes. My union leaders and everybody in the state of Washington and the Bernie Crack Coalition, I have begged of the Bernie Crack Coalition to put these minimum federal standards on the table, and they don't only not want to put them on the table, they're trying to silence me and jail me over my Facebook comments rather than telling the truth. Sanders told us needs to be done for my class of people.
Well, the only thing I can tell you, brothers, I don't know too much details about your thing, but you can't give up. If you're really about protecting your fellow brothers and sisters on the job and workers you don't even know from coast to coast.
Hi folks, it's Darren Ray Fonso talking about workers' compensation or labor and industries here in Washington State and across America. Tonight what we're talking about is politics and Democrats and Republicans and Bernie-crats. Interesting enough, I have 2 of them that all fall under Bernie-crats actually. One of them we're going to hear from first is Scott Stefani. He's a self-proclaimed Republican, log cabin Republican from Washington State, and he is running for U.S. Congress. And I will let him explain to you about workers' comp, and then after that you will hear from Rosa Calderon, who is a Democrat and a Bernie-crat out of California. She will tell us about workers' comp, and she calls it a war and one calls it a genocide. So let's hear from both sides, and we will hear from the Republican tell us how it's a genocide, and then we will hear from the Democrat out of California tell us the solution that nobody seems to want to do on either side. Yeah, both parties are in on it. But here we go. Let's listen to the candidates. Let's listen to the candidates tell us about workers' comp in America today.
Hi, welcome to our Revolution Washington Bernie-crats Coalition vetting interview of Scott Stefani from Congressional District 1 here in Washington State. Welcome, Scott. Thank you for joining us.
Said one of the couple of questions in here did relate to what I was going to ask anyway next. So I'm going to actually bring in from audience here. They've asked it a little bit better than I was going to, so I'm going to use theirs. So we regulate spark plugs on a national level. We feel we should regulate I feel we should regulate state workers' comp laws on a federal level, how we treat all injured workers across the country, so it's equal for all. The question is, will you support Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Tom Perez's call for minimal federal oversight for our broken state workers' comp systems? And do you feel we need a state fix or a federal fix?
Well, let me say, first of all, I appreciate the problem. I did workers' comp law at the federal level for longshoremen. I also had done it at the state level, and it has gotten worse and worse and worse. And let me explain why I think it's happening. I think we are experiencing a pre-planned genocide, and I think people simply need to open their eyes to see it. We see it with regard to workers' comp. We see
everybody, and welcome to We the People. Tonight, We the People meet Rosa Calderon. She's running in California's 4th Congressional District, and she is a geoscientist. And I am very excited to talk to her about what that is and what she does and all the activism that she's been doing, according to her website. Rosa, thank you for joining us on We the People. We're going to go to Laura Livengood. Thank you for your response. I really appreciate that answer. That was honest, and I appreciate that. Laura's got some questions. And by the way, Expanding Electrons, thank you so much. We're having a great discussion in chat, I see.
Oh, yes. So this is from Darren. Darren's very passionate about this, and I think I've simplified his basic question, but it really stems about how we are letting down our injured workers. And she's wondering, do you support Senator Sanders' call for federal oversight of state work comp systems? Feels like we are really letting our injured workers down in California, and wonder what you thought about that.
Yeah, so, in California, we have a lot of issues that I think that most people just keep saying they're state issues. But I think at the federal level, there is always something that we can do. And that is always done by incentives, right? Here in California, I used to work in construction, and I used to see how workman's comp used to work. In fact, my boyfriend, he's actually one of the people who was injured here in California. And after you meet a certain amount of days, you're kicked off the program. So you either you're rushed to either settle with the company that you were hurt with. And the deals aren't really there. And there's really no support at the state level to guide you through the process. And so there's really no oversight. I mean, so a lot of these companies are getting away with really murder. They're paying out people for fractures to their spine, at $10,000, $17,000 when they know that the lifelong care is going to be well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's just one of the reasons why I support Medicare expansion for all, so that people are not stuck with these enormous bills that they're going to have to fork out of nowhere. I mean, the amount that people are being charged for doctor visits and follow-ups are absurd, and no one can afford them. So it just leaves more room for more injuries in the future. And I believe that we can have some real progress if the federal decides to have oversight at every state. And I'm telling you that because California has higher standards than other states. So I can't imagine what's happening in other states.
Yeah.
Wow. Know your stuff there.
Yeah, I think he's speaking in terms like what he's seeing in Washington. It feels like war against workers, and they're really being let down.
Absolutely.
So,
I
Hi folks, Darren Ray Fonso here, talking about workers' compensation, or labor and industries as we call it here in the state of Washington, and my quest to get the minimum federal oversight on the table for the injured workers of America that Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Tom Perez all told us we needed as of 4 years ago. So here's my shout out and call to Senator Rick Larsen, Representative Rick Larsen, U.S. Representative Rick Larsen, who's my person in Congress who I'm supposed to contact if I want to, get help for the injured workers of America. So let's try it. 1202 225-2605.
Representative Larson's office. This is Fair speaking. How can I help you?
Yeah, I'm calling to find out. I want to leave some information for the congressman.
Sure.
I'm a constituent of his from Washington State, and I'm an injured worker, and I want to know why he has failed over the last 4 or 5 years to put the minimum federal oversight for injured workers on the table that Senator Sanders, Patty Murray, and Tom Perez all told us in a letter to the U.S. Department of OSHA and Labor that we needed. So I'm wondering why, as an injured worker and a work comp victim in the state of Washington and America today, why isn't Representative Rick Larson putting our minimum federal oversight for injured workers on the table?
Right. I'll make sure to pass that along to the congressman. Could I just get your name and address real quick?
Hi folks, Darren Ray Fonso here, and right now I am getting a call from Tyler Vega. Hello? Yeah, Tyler? Yeah, it's Darren. It's Darren Fonso. Well, I'm just, you called me, so I wanted to get it live, but I can do it better with this phone.
Hey, look, I'm just calling that I am hoping that we can figure out some way to address your issue. And the only way I know how to do that immediately is through advocacy. Long term, of course, we can try for legislative solutions, but I don't have any power legislatively yet, and nor do any of my people. And I know that things are a little crazy online, and the response is not perfect, but I just want you to know that people are listening and do give a fuck. We're doing our best and are all pretty, well, we're all just struggling to make it right now. And I'd like to set up a call with Scott, but I don't know if we can all keep it together. Scott is a good man, and he's, he is a lawyer and has worked he has actually defended people in workers' comp before. He knows more than all of us, I think. Maybe not you, certainly more than the rest of us. And I think we can do something. I think we can make moves that would affect the situation in a good way if we can all get on the same page. So I want to know if you feel like you can be a part of that conversation and have it be productive. And I wanted to get a sense of.
Well, yeah. Okay, can I talk now? Was that a yes? Okay. Well, what I want to say, Tyler, is before I go talk to Steve, who I applaud his efforts. He's an awesome lawyer, and he helps the homeless, and he's helping with foreclosure lawyers. He hasn't practiced work comp law in 20 years, and when he did, it was on the federal level, not on the state level, and that's the problem, as the state level. And now another issue I'm having, sir, is that I don't need to talk to him as a lawyer because we have the State Bar Association. Do you know them? The American Bar Association. They have written a letter, and in that letter it talks about the overtaking of the federal overtake of a broken state work comp. No, I mean in there it talks about single payer, sir. It talks about how single payer in Colorado was defeated basically because the workers were not going to have time loss and they were not going to have vocational services. So in other words, we're being cost shifted. And we see the same thing going on here with this single payer plan. And so when you tell me you have a solution, but your solution is single payer, then yeah, it's going to be hard for us to be on the same page with you if your solution for labor and injured workers of America is a single payer plan in one state. Now, the American
injured workers more, and when you do workers more, and when you do more for injured workers. There.
Yes. Yes. And we got to get Tyler elected first before he can do anything about him. When he's elected is when we really hold the feet to the fire. Holding his feet to the fire now that's distracting from the bigger purpose of getting a progressive elected in office and getting things like this into place. So we totally hear you, Darren. We hear you. We've read all your comments on the videos. We know that that's super important. We're trying to get people in place that can deal with that. So be here now.
That's a prefix for this whole thing.
Yes.
We've got to do this when they're in office. We've got to do this when there in office. It's,
So
you
we
know.
got to get him in office, and you can't have them have their entire platform and everything all worked out. Tyler said more than once during his interview, he's going to do what his constituents tell him and ask him, and what he's not going to be bossed by corporations. But he's got to get elected first before he has that mandate. So let's concentrate on it. And same with all of our the candidates, and not just Washington.
Right. We hear you in all caps, Darren. Honestly, we do. And Phil.
So there you have it. I've reached out to my fellow Democrats and fellow progressives and even fellow Democratic Socialists, if you want to call them that. And none of them want to step up and help put the minimum federal oversight onto the table that Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Tom Perez all told us, Injured Workers of America, we need. So the ones doing the blocking here are my own liberal left, failing to stand up and fight for the Injured Workers of America, and what we're being told to, as we get excuses from people like Randy Rhodes and Tom Hartman, and the progressives here in my state of Washington and Democrats all come out and tell us, well, gee, like Pramila Jayapala, Representative Pramila Jayapala. She comes out and says, well, gee, we're going to get you universal health care. That's why I don't stand up and fight for your injured workers minimum federal oversight. The problem with that is the Medicare for All bill, Section 801, leaves injured workers out. Leaves our injured workers behind just like Canada did, but yet our progressive left is failing to step up and tell us about that as they tell us to get out, injured workers that want the minimum federal oversight on the table that our side told us we need. They kick us out. They tell us to go away. They shun us, they shame us, and do everything but step up and represent us with the needed minimum federal oversight, and then give us nothing but alternative solutions and tell us to seek out people, Republicans no less, like Republican Scott Stefani, who is our Bernie-crat endorsed progressive Bernie-crat here in the state of Washington, that Tyler Vega and his gang have all promoted as being a Bernie-crat, yet he has a big R in front of his name. This is egregious at this point that I am being told as a liberal injured worker here in the state of Washington that I need to seek alternative solutions from a Republican, Scott Stefani. This is where the failure is. This is where the divide is in the Democratic Party today. And when everybody is representing the business community instead of stepping up and putting the injured workers solution on the table, then it is our own liberal left that is failing the injured workers of America at this point. We can't blame the right if the left don't stand up and help us fight. Fonso here, talking about workers' compensation, or labor and industries as we call it here in the state of Washington. Today's topic is politics once again, and workers' comp, and the issue is going to be Medicare for all and whether or not the injured workers of America are going to be included or excluded under the new Medicare for all laws. So I am calling Pramila Jayapal, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. So let's see if we can get a hold of her first. Or someone from her office, at least. Speaker. Hi, I'm calling with a question about Medicare for all that I was wondering if you might be able to answer for me. Hello? Hello? Well, we'll try one more time. I don't know what happened. Call back. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm calling about, I have a question about Medicare for all, and I was wondering if you'd be able to answer it for me.
I can try.
Well, the question is that it says nobody will be left behind, but I'm a little worried if our injured workers in America will be left behind or not. Because there's like a section 801 that says it will prohibit of employee benefits, and so that's why I'm wondering about Section 801 of this new law that's coming out. Do you know anything about that, or does Pramila Jayapala know if injured workers will be covered, excluded, or included or excluded in this new law?
Let me take a look at the materials, and I will try to answer that.
Okay. It's section 801.
Yeah, I know. I just have to find the.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. Yeah, someone just showed me it, and that's why I was calling to find out, because yeah, it'd be interesting to know if we will be covered or not, because we're being told nobody's going to be left behind. Yet in Canada, the injured workers got left behind up there, and so that's why it'd be interesting to find out if we're leaving our people behind down here too or not. As an injured worker, I'm speaking as an injured worker.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
And maybe you know some other section that I don't know, or this other person doesn't know of, that says we are covered, you know?
Well, so I don't know the circumstances for Canada. I'm not finding the answer immediately, like looking at the summary. The intention is that Medicare for All would replace existing insurance.
Right, but it's the same Sanders bill. So I, as an injured worker in America, would like to know, my people keep telling me universal health care is going to resolve the injured workers problem in America, yet when a man in one state gets $35,000 for an amputated arm and a man in the other state gets $750,000 for that same amputated arm, I would like to know how universal health care is going to remedy that inequality that is happening to injured workers in America today. It does nothing to address the inequality for injured workers in America. And I would also like to know if we have PTSD for first responders in one state, yet the next state over, like say in Ohio right now, denies injured workers PTSD for their on-the-job injuries for first responders, then is that fair for all first responders across the nation? For one state to say, yeah, we cover your PTSD, but the other state to say, sorry, you're out of luck. We can't afford to take care of workers in our state. Yes. What we need to do is wake up here, and the liberal left needs to get honest and put the minimum federal oversight on the table and fight as hard for that as they do the Medicare for All, that yes, some of us are for, even injured workers are for, but yet if you do not put the minimum federal oversight for injured workers on the table at the same time, you are leaving our injured workers behind, just as Canada left their injured workers behind. Well, none of you say a word about it, and are all hoping that we cost shift our non-catastrophic OJIs off to this new Medicare for All program so that the employers can get out of their burdens under the grand bargain. We need some honesty here, and we need our liberal left and people like Pramila Jayapala to stand up and tell us the truth and to fight for our minimum federal oversight for injured workers as hard as they do to try and cost shift us. I want to know, if you're going to tell the injured workers of America universal health care is going to resolve your issues, please tell that to the men in this following video that lost their arms, and one man got $35,000 and the other one got $750,000. Please step up, my fellow progressives, and tell me how your universal health care is going to stop that inequality for American injured workers today. Please tell me how. Please tell me how. Because right now, what we are doing is leaving the injured workers of America behind.
Michael Graybell, tell us about the changes that have happened in workers' compensation laws over the last few decades.
Well, what states have done is really three things. They've cut benefits. They've made it harder to qualify for workers' comp benefits by raising legal standards. And they've also created a number of hurdles to getting medical care. So what's happening to these workers is very quickly they're seeing lower benefits, and they're seeing exactly the financial downfall that workers' compensation was supposed to prevent. Or they're facing, they're having to battle for years in these administrative courts to get the medical care, even prosthetics in some cases, that their doctors recommend.
Howard Burkus, why are so many states moving to cut workers' comp?
Well, there are a couple of things that have occurred. One is medical costs have increased so dramatically over the years. But the other thing is we've had a couple of recessions in the last 15 years, and states are competing with each other fiercely for business. And one of the things that businesses complain about all the time is the cost of workers' compensation insurance premiums. Some businesses are self-insured. It's the cost that they pay workers when they're injured on the job. And so there's been what some people have characterized as a race to the bottom. As businesses complain about these costs, they go to lawmakers in state in state capitals around the country and say, this is one thing you can do to help us compete with the next state. And of course, each state is dropping costs, is lowering costs. So there's this competition to be lower than the next state, even as they continue to cut costs.
So, Michael Graybill, employers are, in essence, paying less than they used to for workers' comp.
Right, right. Despite the drumbeat of complaints about costs in workers' comp, we looked at the data, and a number of studies show that employers are paying the lowest rates that they've paid for workers' compensation insurance since the 1970s. And there's only a few states that are paying anywhere close to what they were paying in the 70s. And the other thing is that insurance companies are also doing well. In 2013, they had an 18% profit on the workers' comp line, which was their best year since the 1990s. And if you look at the comparison of how much workers' comp eats up of an average worker's paycheck, it's very small when you compare it to how much health insurance has been rising or how much retirement savings costs.
Staying both on the job and healthy may be as vital as ever, as a new investigation shows workers' compensation benefits nationwide have been cut. The moves benefit employers and insurance companies that are supposed to cover hurt workers. ProPublica and NPR conducted the joint investigation. The outlets published identical articles Wednesday morning, along with a state-by-state breakdown profiling the cuts over the past 13 years. Here are some of the investigation's key findings. Since 2003, lawmakers in 33 states have passed new laws reducing workers' comp benefits or making them tougher for employees to access. Each state varies significantly on how much you can receive, so where you get hurt matters. Many states cut off benefits after an arbitrary time limit instead of when the worker is recovered, and employers and insurance companies now have more control over medical decisions. The report was especially critical of states like Florida, which has reduced workers' comp benefits by 65% over the past 2 decades. In California, insurers can use the opinions of doctors who never actually saw a patient to reopen old cases and deny medical care. Independent medical reviewers in that state denied the recommendation of workers' doctors in 91% of cases.
Yeah, you know, everyone thinks that workers' comp is so expensive. But in fact, we looked at the numbers and we found that employers are actually paying the lowest cost for workers' compensation insurance since the 1970s. And insurers are doing fairly well, too. In 2013, they had an 18% profit, their best year since the 1990s.
In another case highlighted Wednesday morning, ProPublica and NPR pointed out a worker who loses an arm on the job in Alabama is only entitled to a maximum of $48,000 in compensation. Just across the border in Georgia, a worker could get almost $700,000 more over his or her lifetime. ProPublica and NPR say the investigation took up much of the last year for the outlet's 2 reporters, Michael Graybill and Howard Burkus. For Newsy, I'm Cliff Judy.